Morning, everyone, and hello. Welcome to this morning's edition of Techno Crime Fighters Forum. It's episode number 47, and I'm here this morning with Dr. Catherine Houghton from Switzerland, and we will be joined later on um, by Karen Stewart, NSA whistleblower Karen Stewart. Dr. Millicent Black may join us, but I'm not super certain. I know she's very busy this morning. So it may be the three of us for a while. And for right now, it's Catherine and me. So hi, Catherine.
Hi, Yarmola. Yes, well, I guess what people should know is that right now, since the start of the new year, we have been working flat out, and there are lots and lots of new projects. So when we start Techno Crime Fighters Forum late, or when you feel that you don't hear from us for a week, it's not because we are flagging, but rather because we are working overtime and we're trying to get so much done. So there are lots and lots of good projects starting now. I think we can disclose that much.
Yes, absolutely. And, I do apologize for starting late again this morning. We were just kind of trying to pull the pieces together. So, but we're here and we're getting started. I guess today the big thing is, of course, today is the anniversary of Dr. Rani Lukannan-Kilder's death, and various people around the world are commemorating her work, her life. We all know what an extraordinary pioneer she's been, and a great public speaker and witness to the atrocities of mind control technology and neurotechnology and directed energy weapon technology being used in civilians worldwide, literally all over the world. I know the Polish television channel NTV did a presentation this morning, which I'm afraid I missed. I'm going to have to go look for the recording. I just got the latter part of it, and I see part of my little video was published over there. But I missed everyone else's conversation, so I really, really want to go back and look for it. Did you have a chance to catch it, Catherine? Or
yes, I quickly skimmed through. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to actually watch the whole thing yet. This is one thing I'm looking forward to this evening. But do you have the link up so that people know which one we're talking about? Because I think if you just give me a moment.
Put the link in chat, maybe.
Yeah, if you give me a moment, I'm just going to look for it because I did have it up somewhere.
Yeah, that would be great. Yes, because that's a really, really important conference, I think. It was, I think, the third International Day Against Mind Control, and various speakers have been invited, both from the United States and from Europe. And, Dr. Robert Duncan, Karen Stewart was invited. Hi, Karen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I know Karen's just settling in. So, and various other people were invited. I forget the whole list at this point in time, but, we can put up the little poster and the link shortly.
So I've just managed to bring it up. Just a second. I did find it. Let me just actually find the right location. So okay, I think the one problem is that people who don't have a Polish keyboard might have difficulties in actually typing the address. But if you allow me to share my screen, we are talking about this TV channel here. So NTV, that's the video. And when you actually, it doesn't seem to load for me. Oh yes, here it is. So this is a special episode, I think, today for to commemorate the death of Dr. Rani Kilder. And I really recommend that everybody go to the channel here of NTV and Poland, especially the people who speak Polish, and have a look at the videos. They have a lot of interviews in English that they translate. So a lot of material. It's really, if you're looking for good info, it's definitely worth having a look here. So I really recommend it. And also this is one of the few channels that does regular updates on mind control, etc. So, please go and have a look and check it out. I guess the other thing, so on, what shall we start with today? Because the main thing, I guess, will be Dr. Rani Kilder and all the things that branch off from her case, which is stupendous. But shall we have a quick round of updates to so that people actually hear what we are, what we've been up to. So Karen, we were just updating everybody that now in January we're starting all these projects and we're all being worked to death basically. So, you know, if we don't tweet or if we don't make videos, I haven't done a video in a long time. It's because we're doing so many different things at once. We can't keep up. But there have been amazing things happening. So, for example, on the 7th of February, yesterday, there was the big protest in London. So Jeff Godwin and his campaign for decency was, I think, in front of the Parliament in Parliament Square in London. And then they moved to New Scotland Yard, where they wanted to interview the police about their involvement with organised stalking. And funnily enough, the police had no officers available in New Scotland Yard to deal with, you know, the severe cases of organised stalking.
In that entire building, that was the headquarters, right?
It was the headquarters, and it is, you know, it's astounding. I mean, I can only recommend to people that, so for example, the way I caught this senior guy from the Swiss intelligence agency is by going to the military HQ, not to the intelligence agency. So maybe if you're looking for a senior police officer, the last place to find one is New Scotland Yard. Maybe try a pub, you know, maybe try bottling someone in a pub, and then one of them will turn up, you know. I don't know. This is absolutely ridiculous. And but what was really good, I think, is when I had a look where these people were standing, it's exactly opposite from the Supreme Court. And I hope they made enough noise that everybody working in the Supreme Court of the UK heard the protest, because I think their banners should be visible from the window of the Supreme Court, you know, certainly from the area where people are waiting for court cases. And I really think that the judiciary needs to know about the scale of this, because at the end of the day, it is the judiciary. And actually, it is also the Supreme Court judges who have to ensure that certainly the UK legal system is being cycled out of deep capture, because there are seriously corrupt judges in the UK judiciary. They are literally members of this criminal organization. They are members of what is referred to as the Illuminati, but is actually just a mafia, a global mafia, a criminal mafia that is conducting a global Holocaust. And judges are members. Judges are members of pedophile rings. There has been, well, I'm aware of some evidence of judges covering up, you know, crimes of pedophile rings, and also making it very hard for people who are fighting pedophile rings to actually hold on to their jobs, etc. So I also have a little pack of, information on corruption in the UK judiciary. And it is I personally think, of paramount importance that every system recovers itself. So the police has to pull itself out of deep corruption, but the judges have to pull the judges out of deep capture, you know. And similarly, the parliamentarians in the UK Parliament have to look after their own. And talking about the parliamentarians, just very, very briefly, I tweeted out an article, which I think is kind of interesting because people start talking about it. And it was, oh gosh, I think it just disappeared off my screen. But if you look at my Twitter stream, it is about two Masonic lodges operating in Westminster. This is big. So two secret societies deep capturing members of parliament. Okay, this is pretty big, and The Guardian reported it. Every single time I hear something, The Guardian reporting actually, you know, deep capture related material, I'm mildly surprised, you know, because Luke Harding, one of their, you know, star journalists, refused already 2 years ago, or yeah, certainly 2 years ago, to report about the Holocaust. So it looks like they are slowly inching towards this. But I think the key thing to remember is I noticed from those little MI5 infiltrators that were pushed into my path that MI5 seems to try to save its skin by saying, oh, it's the Freemasons. It's not us, it's the Freemasons. And I warn you ahead of time of this trick, because it is a trick. Yes, the Freemasons are involved big time. Yes, the Freemasons are global, interconnected mafia, connected to the mafia. That is true. However, it is the job of MI5 to actually prevent this sort of deep capture. So if they come with, you know, pointing the finger at the Freemasons, quickly point the finger back at them and say it is your JOB guys to actually sort this stuff out. So don't buy this nonsense from them, you know. Yes, the Freemasons are involved, and it's pretty serious when secret services are infiltrating parliament, but it's MI5's job to sort this out, you know. And why is it that so many senior members of MI5 and MI6 are also part of the, whatever it's called, Royal Arch, Freemasons, or whatever these nonsense clubs are called? You know, how is that? How can this be the case? Because the Freemasons are at the top, actually a criminal organization. So anyway, this is the news from London that I'm aware of. Quickly,
Catherine, sorry. I wanted to say it would be great if we could just play that little 5-minute video, actually, of the demo that Jeff sent us this morning, because I think what they had done is actually supreme. It's extraordinary and it's powerful. And, you know, I've been interviewing and talking with Jeff quite continuously over a period of time now for a couple months, really, over a period of, you know, several podcasts. And his voice really needs to be heard. He has a powerful voice. And what he is saying, the message that he is giving to everybody out there who is suffering from surveillance abuse, is that you kind of need to get off the couch. You kind of need to make your presence felt. You kind of need to get in front of these people who are doing it. Get in front of Parliament, get in front of New Scotland Yard, and actually present yourself and, you know, stand up as a witness to these crimes and say these crimes are occurring. And, you know, I'm a victim. Now, none of us want to use that word victim because we don't want to label ourselves. And we don't, because that's not who we really are. We all know who we are. We are very powerful human beings. As Dr. Rani Kilder frequently reminds us, right? In all of her many videos, we are powerful just as being human beings who can think and who can feel. We have hearts and souls, and we have brains. We're not robots yet, although there are certain species of technocrats out there who would like to robotize us. But the word victim is useful to point out that we are being victimized by the intelligence agencies. We are being victimized by the militaries. We are being victimized by fusion centers and departments of Homeland Security. Homeland Security, which is simply wreaking state-sponsored terrorism on the populace and keeping the war hidden through using stealth weaponry, you know? And so this is why I think what Jeff Godwin has to bring forward is absolutely incredible, super powerful, because he's unafraid to, you know, say it and literally belt it out in front of Parliament. So if we play this video, you can really see, you know, what we're talking about here. So maybe I'll just screen share and we'll just play the 5-minute clip. And, you know, he's joined by others too, two powerful ladies in particular, Natalie Moore, who has written a book, Remote Control, and whom I also interviewed, and Naomi, whom I hope to interview, but whom Jeff covered in a documentary called The Naomi Story. So all of these voices are powerful. So let's just sit back for 5 minutes and just listen to them. I'm going to screen share. Can you hear okay?
I can't actually hear anything on my end.
Okay, no, I can't hear the video.
I think it might be because you have headphones. So it could be the case that it's not actually, you know, it might be just recording the sound as it comes out. So maybe try pulling out your headphones, Ramola.
Yes.
Works better?
Okay. Yes.
I can't, unfortunately, I can't hear anything on my end.
Yeah, it disappeared.
Yeah, it disappeared. But maybe what we could do is, you know, show some stills from the video, and then basically just send people to the link, because then they can stop Techno Crime Fighters and then change to the link.
Actually, Catherine, can you play it maybe, and let's see if yours works better?
I will try. I will try. Hang on.
Yeah. We'll try it one more time, and then if not, we can ask people to check it out themselves.
Let me share my screen. I think there might be some background noise. Okay, if it doesn't play like this, I will pull out my headphones. Can you hear this?
No.
Not
you can't hear. Okay, then let me try this. Okay. Can you hear now?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So this is outside Parliament. Okay, so here you can see, you know, the Parliament, and I think there were 20 people present. And later on, I think Jeff is giving a speech. Actually, I think his speech is, they changed to New Scotland Yard. And then Jeff's speech is very powerful, I think.
That's Naomi.
Made a request, formal request, to speak with the police, but somewhat bizarrely, there's no police officers available inside New Scotland Yard, so they have to call for 2 police officers on motorbikes, currently somewhere in London, that are going to come here to talk with us. So that's quite absurd, really. And again, indicative of the centralisation that's gone on, where the higher-ups simply do not want to talk to us because they're probably very, very aware of why we're here. So they're sending for 2 police officers on bikes to turn up to talk to us, which is quite absurd, and one might also say quite insulting, given that we are the electorate, we are the British people, and we've come here to dialogue with the police, who go on about neighbourhood watches and relations with the public, yet when the public comes to talk to them, are sadly not available. Because the truth is, the police are involved in organised stalking. They are involved and perhaps coordinating, along with intelligence agencies, the Prevent scheme. But here I am. We've come to talk to the police in a peaceful manner to find out what is going on. Why are they harassing and stalking ordinary British citizens? We are not paedophiles. We are not terrorists. We are not extremists. So what gives them the right to follow us around 24/7, to look at our emails, to look at our internet, and a lot of other very nasty things that the police are doing? So here we are outside New Scotland Yard. I've come to talk to the police about their involvement in organised stalking, and they can't find a single police officer in New Scotland Yard. Martin, show the sign.
There's the sign. New Scotland Yard.
How utterly absurd the situation is. This is how removed from the British public the police actually are. So we are now in the ridiculous situation where we are waiting for 2 police officers on motorbikes to come and talk with us.
So I will stop it here. Sorry, I want people to go to the link. It's called Surveillance Abuse Demo 7th February, London, UK 2018, and actually listen to this in high quality, because you already heard the gist of what Jeff was saying, but I really think you should, you know, blow it up on your screen and listen to the full thing in high definition and full, you know, proper audio, because what he's got to say is just so powerful. But I mean, the bottom line is that I think Jeff is right. The police is involved in organized stalking. In fact, I would go further than that. I think the police, the military police and the intelligence agencies are not just involved in organized stalking, they are organizing it, and they are equipping and training members of the public, and I would rather say the more scummy part, utterly degenerate criminal part of society. They are training them up in the extermination of their neighbors. This is the conclusion of my own investigation. In absolutely every single case, neighbors are involved. They are wielding high-tech weapons. People are triggering the head chips of victims from very close by, close range, you know. It's not always mobile phone towers, I don't think. And it's always coordinated with neighbors and with neighborhood Nazi, actually death squads. And the fact that it's identical, the cases are identical between the UK, between Germany, Switzerland, every single European country and every single state of the US and other countries in the world, shows us But this is actually a very well organized, very well equipped global Holocaust that they are doing. So it's quite telling, but it's also telling that not a single police officer could be found. However, I would at the next demo on the 7th of March, I would go one step further. And what I would do is I would first of all go there and hand in, hopefully by that time we all have the affidavits written and every single person can get back up what they're saying with a pile of other affidavits, and then hand it in to the police and hand it in the knowledge that when the police refuses to investigate crimes against humanity, they are guilty. They are conspiring. They're actually conspiring to acquiesce to, at least, if not actively take part in and actively encourage crimes against humanity. So that's a pretty big thing. So then with that, the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police and any other police service can be removed from office and hopefully put straight into jail, which is where they belong, I think, personally. That's the upshot of this. So what Jeff has done is hugely powerful. And it is, I really hope that every single time, every month, the numbers double, an exponential doubling. So I really hope that on the 7th of March, we can get together 40 people who go along and actually protest, you know. But it's very important what he did.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's powerful. And I also think, you know, it's kind of a model to the rest of us, as you say, Catherine, you know, in the US and in other countries in Europe to start doing precisely that. The one thing that happens, and of course, you know, I know that mainstream media is working to hide these crimes. They are indeed colluding and conspiring, as you say. And I think we need to sort of just say it as it is. The fact is mainstream media is simply not reporting. And if at all it is reporting, it merely reports on those who are reporting, those who are quote unquote named targeted individuals, and it casts them as delusional. So that in itself is a crime. And, you know, has to be considered when we write down our roster of crimes here for Nuremberg 3.0 or whatever. But because mainstream media is not reporting, they're not going to show up at a protest like the one that Jeff and everybody else did in London in Parliament. I didn't see, you know, mainstream media presence over there. But possibly if this keeps happening, if these protests keep happening, old media, at least, will have to cover it. Now, this is the other issue. You know, old media also doesn't cover issues related to targeting. But I think it's time for old media to start waking up and start covering, because targeting is nothing but surveillance abuse. And I think that's something that I've been trying to hammer out recently, and I think Karen's also trying to hammer out. And many of us are trying to sort of, you know, put the spotlight on this. This starts with surveillance abuse. How are people getting targeted? How are people getting hit with electromagnetic weapons? How are they being rolled up and trafficked into these, you know, military experimentation projects? The first step is some joker locally, some FBI informant, you know, some community informant who's actually getting a paycheck from Intel, you know, from the FBI or from the local police setup. Runs across you, doesn't like you, decides to report you, whether this is revenge or whistleblower retaliation or whatever it is. Anyone who speaks out, engages in community activism, presents themselves as having a powerful individual voice and critical mind, these are the people who are being targeted. You know, activists are being targeted, whistleblowers are being targeted. Anybody with spine, integrity, and some kind of spiritual quality about them is also being targeted. So because we, as you know, as Jeff has pointed out in various podcasts with me, behind targeting is Satanism. There is a very deep, dark, occult, secret society presence behind targeting, behind this whole phenomenon of targeting. So the targeting occurs because they've set up the surveillance apparatus, and now that surveillance apparatus is being misused and abused. And this is nothing but surveillance abuse. First and foremost, it is surveillance abuse. Because people of integrity, people of absolute innocence, who have nothing to do with terrorism, are being mislabeled terrorists and being thrown into these programs. And that's how, you know, surveillance abuse is the very first thing that's being done over here. So one of the things that I did this past week, actually, the last couple of days, I kind of took a break from my podcast and I focused on doing a couple blog posts. One of them was to report Karen's flyer, which is, I think, a very, very important flyer And it's on the front page of the Everyday Concerned Citizen now, and I recommend that everybody go and look at it and read it, because that is nothing but the truth. So this flyer is about the DHS, about the Department of Homeland Security, which really needs to be dissolved. The Department of Homeland Security is running terror operations on America. And how it's doing it is it's by running a terrorist watch list scam. And, you know, kudos and hats off to Karen for saying it like it is and putting it out there. You know, so alt media needs to wake up and start covering what Karen's doing. Because if you're not following yet what Karen is doing, at some point you're going to want to follow what Karen is doing, because Karen is leading the charge here. And she is really educating America and educating the world as to what is going down here. And what is going down here is nothing but an atrocity in the name of secrecy, in the name of surveillance, in the name of national security, and it's nothing but abuse. It's nothing but surveillance abuse. So, you know, I'm going to hand the floor over to Karen at this point, and perhaps, I don't know if we read out this particular flyer before on Techno, Karen, but this may be the moment.
Oh, yes. Well, I don't think I had written it before. It came out pretty quickly. Let me see if I can find it again. But it just, again, something that kind of demanded being written. So I wrote it, and it's a miracle. It's one page considering how I write. You know, I'm just too verbose usually, but I think I got a lot of the main punches in. Could I get everything that everybody's suffering in? No, I couldn't. I'm sorry. So I'll go over the flyer very quickly, and I have been sending it out to people who want it. All right, it basically says Department of Homeland Security, has DHS under it. Then it says terrorist watch list scam in bold underneath. And it says thousands of innocent people put on watch list with no vetting at all, just good old boy say so. Chain of command, a pyramid scheme participants are DHS, FBI, fusion centers, civilian vigilantes, and I have in quotes, neighborhood Nazis such as Infraguard. The real purpose, stealing stealing taxpayer monies for falsified terrorist numbers, human trafficking, selling inhuman, non-consensual kill contracts on victims to military-industrial complex, murder of watch-listed innocent citizens from tortuous experiments, ID theft, life insurance fraud, trust fund fraud, joint property purchases fraud that pay off ghost partners upon death, murder, tactics, blanketing area with false and vicious slander and libel of targeted individual, multi-person paid relay-style stalking harassment 24/7, home break-ins, pet thefts, mutilations, murders, gassing, poisoning, rewiring smart meters to kill, using high-tech covert weapons such as directed energy weapons, covertly implanting victims with chips to facilitate targeting. And it says police and local authorities are told to butt out of sanctioned federal program or participate through entirely unconstitutional. Victims are falsely labeled mentally ill, and their pleas for equal protection under the law are dismissed and mocked. Victims end up wrongfully murdered, incarcerated, or committed. And that's it. That's the whole page. So I think it gets people's attention. And that's what I was going for.
I think people should print it off and distribute it in their neighborhood. I think it's absolutely compulsory. We all do that.
Is, totally. And I do think this is the one flyer that people need to print out and distribute in our neighborhoods, you know, because all of us, many of us have been creating flyers. My flyers, Karen, are much sportier than yours. Like 100 pages. So this is brilliant. The fact that you got it all in, the manner in which you got it all in. And, you know, I, in my version, my PDF version that I've posted currently, I put your name at the bottom because I think it's vital that people know that this information is being given to you from somebody in the government, somebody who has worked in the government for 28 years, you know, somebody who's worked at the National Security Agency, who is a top intelligence analyst, retiree, and, you know, therefore knows what she's talking about. So I put your name at the bottom if you don't mind, so people know.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I think I've gotten a little bit of reaction here in the neighborhood. I'm seeing a lot of cars go to one or another house and have strange meetings that I don't usually see. So we'll see. We'll see if that is helping or not.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. Yeah, I wonder what that is, because I'll tell you, when I was first targeted, I did see cars coming to houses and people going into people's houses. Yeah. And what they were telling them really was, we're, putting Romola D under investigation because, despite the fact that she's doing art classes, we've decided that she's a terrorist. So that's the story that was going around then. So, and I've noticed, by the way, that they come back to the neighborhoods, and they come back and they rev up the neighbors every now and then. And then you see a fresh round of stalking from the neighbors, all that timed arrival, departure, dance nonsense that goes on.
Absolutely. The one thing, one of the things I want to say, allow me to just share my screen, because I think it's important that people go to everydayconcerns.net, right? So if you go to the front page here of everydayconcern.net, you will find here the Department of Homeland Security, DHS terrorist watch list scam. And this is what Karen was reading out here. And I think you should make these flyers, right? And also, I think the author, Karen Stewart, it should be emphasized that Karen Stewart is an NSA whistleblower of international renown. She's globally known. She is bigger than Snowden. She is the only NSA whistleblower to actually talk about the global electromagnetic kill system and this entire global Holocaust. So she is bigger than Snowden. And it's very important because people have to understand that this is not just somebody talking, somebody putting out a flyer. It comes from somebody who had top security clearance, worked 28 years for the NSA, had, I think, every single IQ and psychological test in the book and passed it with flying colors, until she actually hit at the deep chance on the deep capture of NSA by total criminals. And that's the point when she had to part with NSA. So I would take this information very seriously and distribute it and point people to the fact that you can see Karen live every Thursday, and we are continuing this international investigation. And everything that Romola and Karen said about this neighborhood, what this is a neighborhood-driven Holocaust, okay? So the people who you see in your neighborhood conspiring and congregating are actually preparing your murder. This is how it is, right? They are getting weapons into position, and they are planning your murder. The reason why they don't kill you yet is because, as far as I can observe, they are training up children, teenagers, and people in their early 20s so that they can spawn even more death squads, okay? So I would say at this point of the investigation, we can safely say that, you can take it as your duty to actually find out who these people are. And I think, given that we're all under surveillance and we can prove that we are under surveillance, we should put these people under surveillance. So I actually encourage people to try to put these properties under surveillance, find out what number plates are going there, who is going there, because these are neighborhood death squads, okay? And this is absolutely serious. They are there and they're being trained up to kill you, to kill your family, kill your children, and kill as many people in your community as possible. And the people who they're choosing for these jobs are thick as a loaf of bread. Okay, so, and also a lot of them are psychopathic, totally corrupt, utterly degenerate, and it's not possible to stop them. So unfortunately, in 2018, we now have to go after names. We have to go after, there's some sort of knocking in the background I can hear. I don't know what it is. Anyway, so I wanted to say that in 2018, it is of paramount importance you start collecting evidence. So the American president has declared a national emergency about human trafficking. What he means is not just if I can say so, the sex trafficking that we have in the country. He also means the neurotech-induced human trafficking, okay? The biomed slavery. He means the whole lot. The reason why it's a national emergency, I want to emphasize how special it is that the president declares a national emergency, on human trafficking. Basically, it is a national emergency because, as far as we can tell, large parts of every nation on the planet are being human trafficked. And many people don't even understand that they're being human trafficked for biomedical slavery, for human experimentation. They do not understand, either because the neurotech is already overriding their capabilities, or because they just don't get it, or they haven't been shown the information. But if you are listening to this, if you're aware, and if you have people like that in your neighborhood who are using directed energy weapons on you, you have to understand that their goal is to kill you. and to kill your children and to kill as many people as possible in your neighborhood. This is absolutely serious. So I would say, especially in Europe, where we have super strict surveillance laws, forget about them for now, because this is about your surveillance, about your survival against the surveillance. So I would recommend to absolutely everybody, and I'm doing the same, by the way, try to record as many number plates as you can. Try to record as many people about the properties you think are involved. This is absolutely crucial for your survival. And what we have to do is, right now, we're in the fast phase of this war. These people are trying to kill us, and we have to basically get as many names as possible into court as quickly as possible.
And you know, Catherine, I'm sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was going to add very quickly, when you take a license tag, take some kind of description of the car and maybe the person, you know, black, white, female, whatever, so that in the future they can't say, oh, you got the wrong car, just because you have ABC 123 and you don't remember because it's one of 100 cars, whether it was a Hyundai or a Dodge or whatever. So you need to make a little notation so that they can, so that you can say, yes, it is this car, so it is this person, so that somebody doesn't misread a 3 as an 8 and then somebody innocent gets accused. So make some kind of notation to distinguish that tag.
That's
Exactly.
an excellent point. And you know, there's so many times when you just don't have a camera ready.
Yeah.
But and if that happens, I would also suggest just to make a note of it later. You know, when you've been driving, you've got coffee in your hand or whatever, write it down later. You know, write down the license plates. I can tell you that since I published Karen's new flyer, I've been getting a lot of attention, a lot of nasty attention on the roadways. Yesterday, I was at the Fruit Center, which is a local supermarket over here, and there was a van right in front of me, and it had the license plate BBBBB, reversing right in front of me. Now, you know, somebody else can tell me what that's all about, but it seemed a little funny to me. And this morning, when I was driving back to the house after dropping my daughter off at school, license plate US 666, and just as I pulled out my cell phone to take a pic of it, it was zapped by whoever was zapping it locally. And literally, I'm surrounded by cars doing things to me in my car, and the battery was drained. But imagine, US 666, think that's a USG government license plate? I think it is, don't you? So, and we all know that for some reason, the US wants to, or perhaps, you know, is inextricably aligned with 666 and all of its connotations. We know that. Right.
Actually,
but the thing I wanted to say, Catherine, go ahead, Karen.
Just very quickly, can you imagine we're in a country that is basically being governed by 2 separate and vying governments, the duly elected right. and the deep state.
And the deep state apparently is highly satanic in nature and seems to be engaged in death, destruction, lunacy, psychopathy, you name it, right?
And the anti-good. I mean, that's all it is. It's the anti-good. And these people have aligned themselves with that.
And unfortunately, they're sitting inside the military and they're sitting inside intelligence.
A lot, yes.
And so they're getting billions and billions of dollars, and they've also got the power to classify any old thing they like. So if they want to cover something up, it's classified. It's national security. You're never going to find out about it. We're just going to do it to you and you'll never find out about it.
Or at least this is their plan. At least this is their plan. But then fortunately, as Karen pointed out, you can't classify anything to cover up crime. So actually, one of the things that I encourage all the white hat hackers, which I know exist in very large numbers, is to hack away. Now, 2018 is the time to absolutely hack the socks off everything. And I openly invite you, because these people are utter criminals. And I'm telling you, we just have to get into Bluffdale. It's all there. And I can tell you for sure that there must be. I'm pretty sure there are several little Bluffdales somewhere here in Switzerland. So anybody who can get hacking now, please do so. You know, because
and we are here to tell you why. You know, we're here to tell you why people are being tormented. People are being persecuted and tortured to death. People with V2K in particular, you know, who are being taken over. They're neurologically and brain-wise being taken over. These programs are about cloning, EEG cloning somebody's brain, you know, taking over somebody's brain, taking over somebody's body. These programs are about biorobotizing, taking over people's own sensory and motor cortex, taking over people's will and intention. So ask yourself, you know, and if they're doing it to some people, think about it. Think they couldn't do it to you or your sister or your daughter, your brother, your wife. They can do it to pretty much any of us, you know, and that's the horror scenario that we're currently facing that we need to continue speaking out about, because people need to wake up. The thing I wanted to say, Catherine, in response to what you said initially about the neighbors is, you know, some people, those people who are being sheltered from this knowledge that surveillance abuse is occurring on such a massive scale and that stealth weaponry is being used, those people who are being sheltered from this knowledge and also being kept from this knowledge by mainstream media, which is willing every day to lie, defame, libel, slander, just in case, just in order to get across the wrong message that the government is okay, everything is okay, surveillance is going on, but it's all about the bad guys. You know, we are the good guys and they are the bad guys, is the message NSM gives us. And we know how wrong they are. So, but because of this, there is a whole coterie of people. There are huge populations of people who are reading the New York Times, who are watching CBS News, etc., who have no clue what really is going down. To those people, information that the neighborhood is being turned against people of integrity is going to come as a bit of a shock, you know, because what they're being told by the Fusion Center thugs who are entering neighborhoods, you know, the neighborhood watch guys and the civilian vigilante guys from Infraguard, what they're being told by those guys is, this person is under suspicion. This person is under investigation. We are protecting our country. We are the patriots. This is the homeland. We are defending the homeland. We are the patriots. That person is the suspect one and the one who has terrorist connections or is a drug dealer, pedophile, prostitute, whatever. You know, they come up with all these massive stories, right? So, and this is how they're turning neighbors against neighbors within America, in American neighborhoods, and within Europe, within European neighborhoods as well. So by this means, neighbors are being brainwashed, in addition, as you say, Catherine, to being neurotech to bits, because everybody's being neurotech with these frequencies, right? And being mind controlled to believe what these fusion center criminals are coming around telling people. So literally, we are in a position in this country and in other countries, in every country in the world, where the mechanism has been set up, you know, the money, the budgets have been set up. Everything has been set up to protect criminality, which is now being played out in neighborhoods, and the neighbors don't even know. So it's it's a huge challenge actually to people like us to how to get across to these people, how to get across to people who are so lost and entrapped by mainstream media and by fusion center propaganda, which is lies. You know, how to get across to them that what's happening is the opposite of what they think is happening. You know, the real terrorists are in the fusion centers. They're not in your neighborhood.
Absolutely. No, and ironically, the people at the fusion center under the domestic terrorism unit are the domestic terrorists. That's what I found out in Florida, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere. Those are the people who are killing us. They're leading the charge to murder us. And I would call this not only a civil war, but the cowards' silent civil war. Because these people don't have the guts to face us. And they have to do everything from behind the scenes and using fronts and using proxies, because they don't have the guts to confront us at all. So it's the silent, cowardly civil war.
It is. I actually really like so I was putting out, you know, this information, which I've got lots of evidence to show it's true, that every previous world war was staged. And somebody said, this is the one war which isn't staged. This is literally the ultimate war, because these people, for those people who don't know, I think the big scheme is actually Agenda 21. It's depopulation, otherwise known as a massive global genocide. And they want pretty much at least 40% to 60% of us dead. Okay, so that's the best stage of my knowledge. These people are not actually clever.
Catherine, thank you for bringing that up, because that's what I wanted to do. We need to frame all of our conversations within Agenda 21, because these are not outlandish conspiracies or conspiracy theories that we're pointing to. We are pointing to the actual written documentation. It's being rolled out now, and it's all from under Agenda 21, which is also Agenda 2030. And I did a podcast recently with Dr. Karlstrom on that. So thanks.
Actually, one of the things that's super important, so I want to rattle down a few things because I want people to understand this is a war, there's an actual genocide in full swing, and you need to understand what's going on. What you need to do, if you want to inform yourself, is first of all, go to Everyday Concerned. What you need to do to fight this is you need to distribute Karen's flyer, and you need to put in Karen's full credentials so that your neighbors understand who Karen Stewart is. She is bigger than Snowden, okay? And then to inform yourself, I point everybody, hang on, where's Ramola's channel? Here. I want people to go to Ramola D Reports, and actually just through the last week, Ramola did 3 videos. So she is putting out amazing videos between the techno crime fighters, 3 to 4 videos a week. And you need to see here, for example, this is Dr. Eric Karlstrom on deconstructing Agenda 21 and global targeting. So this is what she means. So Professor Karlstrom was a professor of geography. He knows about climate change. He knows about what a massive fraud this is. But the other thing that he's also talking about, I think, is that what the cartel is doing to justify the genocide of a large fraction of every nation of the world is to say, oh, our planet can't take 7 to 9 billion people. And I think Dr. Karlstrom says, actually, the planet can take up to 30 billion people. So this is nonsense. This is as much nonsense as climate change is. Here there's Jeff Godwin, a detailed interview with him. He is trying to really get the campaign up, and he is doing a lot to basically what I call pull up the plane in the UK. So have a look at that. He also knows all about Satanism and signaling. And then also we have Dr. Paul Marco, actually myself, sorry, so I'm not plugging it myself here, but we had a long talk about the Crown Corporation and the role of the mafia and its involvement in the UK. So, what I actually want to do is plug Ramola's channel and her interviews, because also the Changemakers, here's an interview with Melanie, who's still having difficulty with the criminals at Hospital Erasmus and the criminals in Belgium, and all the other Changemakers here. So please go and check this out, because there's lots of work being done behind the scenes to give you this information. And this information is, as I kid you not, absolutely crucial. And I really mean it. It is absolutely crucial for your survival. You need to know who the people are who are killing you. You need to know what's going on. And you need to be able to understand why everything you hear in the mainstream media is a total bag of lies that serves only one purpose: to program you into a totally docile, uninformed state so that you can be killed. You are to be culled. If you don't know about this, you are to be culled. And we are, so the joint investigation team, after 1 year of detailed investigation, we are bringing out a report where we put this in writing for you. But to give you the heads up, I think you are going to be killed with directed energy weapons, with poisons and toxins, including in your water supply. So if you're in the US, watch for things like, I think they're called water districts. So pooling of water to a central point and then redistributing it to the households. Somebody gave me the heads up, somebody who had their own personal well in their property, and they said, they are going to be reorganizing everybody into a water district. So the water is to be pumped away and then pumped and sold back to you for a lot of money. But I think the main problem is, the main point is to poison the water supply, okay? And we have evidence for that. We have victims who are complaining. And to me, they sound like little, little experiments on how to poison the water supply. Okay.
And on that note, I should also mention Janet Phelan's articles.
Yes.
She's been doing a huge amount of research, and she continues to cover the subject. But she has already reported that what's being set up, and she was reporting from California, and she actually looked at blueprints. She went and talked to the guys who were working on the street, on the pipelines over there, and she found out that basically what they were doing is they were removing the old water lines and they were putting in new water lines which had 2 lines at the head. So in other words, and a whole valve setup. So in other words, what they were setting up for, what they are apparently setting up for, and by the way, they're doing waterworks all around the country. They're definitely doing it in Massachusetts. They're tearing up roads, and they're saying that they're replacing the water lines to remove lead, etc., etc. But who knows what they really are doing, right? But in any case, we can tell you what Janet Phelan found out. She found out that they're putting in these 2 lines at the head, which means 2 separate supplies of water can be sent to certain houses, you know. So certain houses can be selected on every street for a different water line, a different water supply. So ask yourselves why they would need to do that.
Exactly. So if you speak out about being killed, you'll be killed and your entire family might be exterminated by being sent poisoned water, for example. You know, so, and this is unfortunately not a joke, because the victim cases are actually, I would say they're all war games in preparation and in training of huge death squads all around the world, unfortunately.
And this is part of Agenda 21, and this is the great culling or the great work. And there are many people, many whistleblowers from the inside who have spoken out about it. You know, Dr. Rayma Lebo, Bob Green, Eustace Mullins, various people have spoken out about it, because these are conversations that have been had, that are being had at certain high levels. And these are plans that are long-term plans that they've been trying to roll out. The chemtrails, the entire chemtrail phenomenon, you know, stands witness to what they're trying to do right now. Because as you know, people are indeed sickening and dying from those chemtrails. There's all sorts of nasty stuff in there. So these are not outlandish conspiracy theories. The information is out there. Oh, look up Kevin Gallile's work, UN scholar. He will show you how from the inception of the UN, it was written into policy. Depopulation was written into policy, but very, very carefully, in such language as to not, you know, rock the boat too much. So just to kind of lead countries, and countries have signed on to it, okay? I forget the exact number, but about 160 governments in the world have signed on to this. And they're all putting into place these programs whereby poisons have been introduced into food supplements, you know, into water. Fluoride is a poison. Absolutely. And now the chemtrail phenomenon, which is perhaps why we're not seeing an end to the chemtrail phenomenon yet.
Absolutely. And I think what people have to understand is that in these government organizations, they are very large, very old pyramid hierarchies, and by the laws of system physics, the top is entirely depleted with psychopathic degenerates by the laws of system physics. So they're not doing this because there's any point. They're doing this because they're utterly degenerate and because psychopaths love to kill. So they first decide to want to genocide a lot of people for their own, actually, sexual arousal, as sick as that might sound. And then they think of the reason. And then they think of, oh, global warming, oh, food shortage, and they make up the reason. So I want to also encourage people to really get their head around this as soon as possible, because the other thing I want to announce is that now I'm working with Andreas von Stockhausen. For those who speak German, there's a long German interview with him, and he is Lieutenant Colonel of the Reserve of the German Army. And I'm working through his case, and I can tell you he is extremely concerned, and we are preparing basically to warn the German military, and this should be actually a warning to absolutely everybody. But in our assessment, the German military is to be used against the German people. And he said, and I hope he doesn't mind, I quote him on this, he said, the Germans are very diligent, which can be a good thing. It takes ages to get them going, but once they have their boots on, they're impossible to stop. Okay, so we basically need to get it out to every single member of the German military that this is what really is going on, and there's nothing. So whatever, you know, sort of commands they are getting, the commands might be coming from actual psychopathic degenerates who have the aim to kill a lot of Germans, a lot of Swiss people, because the Swiss army is in this as well, and then to exterminate them as well. Okay, so this is a total extermination program that's going to be rolled out, and the perpetrators are to die in the second wave as well. Okay, so don't think that just because you're a perpetrator you'll get away with this. You won't, you know. So this is real, guys. And so
Catherine, you're basically talking about an insider who's going to be giving you actual information from his knowledge of how these people have planned it, right? From the inside.
Absolutely. So there's no classified information is being passed to me, but he's sorry, I can hear some knocking. Sorry, I don't know what. Sorry about this, but so he's not giving me any classified information. But what he's saying is just by looking at the declassified, publicly available information and analyzing it. So he was working in the department. So he was posted to Afghanistan. He was posted to the Balkans, so he really knows what he's talking about when he's talking about the current wars. And he was also working for the, it's called the Planungsamt, so the future forecasting agency in Germany. So he knows about future forecasting, but just by looking at the publicly available information, it is extremely not just concerning, we're on high alert. So we're working flat out to actually get this information out. But I'm telling everybody, this is serious. An actual Holocaust is not just being prepared, it is in full swing. And now we are very close to the actual deployment of militaries against the European population.
When you do those videos, Catherine, I just thought of something. Maybe you can click yes for closed captioning, so it could, and we could see a translation.
Yes.
And so then we can also get a transcript, and we could do a translation.
Yeah. We want to start releasing videos in German and in English, you know, so that's very important. The one thing, so just to announce, basically, later this week, there will be another interview with Andreas from Stockhausen. So he will be running Techno Crime Fighters in German with me. And we really want to start, you know, getting awareness. So I'm actually quite pleased about the campaigns that are happening in the US. I'm also very pleased about what's happening in the UK. But I'm absolutely horrified and terrified when I look at the lack of any sort of campaigning in Germany. Any really grassroots getting our teeth into arresting these criminals here. So we really need troops, as it were, people who are fighting these criminals here. And we need to start moving towards mass arrests, as they are already moving towards mass arrests of, for example, pedophiles in the UK and the US. But there's not anything like that here in Germany. And I'm telling you, our ranks up here, also in Switzerland, are full of pedophiles. And we need to remove those because they are in this control architecture. But we need mass arrests. So that's what we're preparing. I'm also, again, I've delayed the release of the affidavit template, but it is for really good reason, because Andreas is helping me to rewrite it and to include many, many things that I think are paramount. So this is the last, 1% that we want to get right. But the ultimate goal is to move towards court cases. Certainly the affidavit collection starts in February, and then we'll move to court cases in March. The other thing I want to announce is in Europe, next week, next Thursday, Thursday is, I think, the 15th of February. Yes, that will be the court case of Frederic Laroche in Grenoble, another victim. That will be one of the actual, I would say, precedent-setting cases in France. So it's super important. I am working flat out to actually help Frederic with his case. But as you can see, that there are so many things happening in parallel. The other thing I basically briefly want to flash up to, get people thinking about this, and also to show that I'm not just sitting on my hands all the time. I am preparing an equipment list. Because there's, if you want to really survive this or actually help us arrest these people, there's a lot of equipment that you need. And I'm just writing a really basic list. The stuff that you need is, for example, an audio recorder, a telephone pickup microphone, because you should record all telephone conversations. You should record all conversations with officials. A digital camera, and also we just mentioned the draining of mobile phones and cameras. You need to buy a power bank. For $10 to $20, you can get a power bank. And I think unless it's connected to a device, it's not possible to drain this thing. So if somebody drains your phone so that you can't record, you have to quickly connect the power bank. And I would almost say have two on you. Okay, so very important. I also recommend, I haven't finished writing this. As you can see, the major equipment for measuring bugs in your body is going in here. Geiger counters and descriptions and so on are all going into this document. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm writing it because now in 2018, I want pretty much everybody to learn how to measure electromagnetic attacks, how to find bugs in there. So microwave, RFID chips in your body. Very important. You need to learn how to actually scout out these neighborhood death squads, and that might be actually of paramount importance to your survival and the survival of your neighbors. So you need to network with the neighbors who have their heads screwed on and are not succumbing to this, sadly. And the reason why you have to do it is because, as Jeff Godwin found out, the police is involved. And I can confirm the police is involved here in Switzerland. I was shot in the head and almost killed by military police in Switzerland myself. I was almost killed by MI5 myself after my High Court case. So yes, all these people are involved. And sadly, what we have to do is we have to do our own forensic police work, and
Catherine, that's brilliant that you're doing that document. I think it'll be very, very useful to everybody, you know, who needs some guidance there as to how to record all of this. And that will be the first step, perhaps, to doing your own police, you know, forensic work, to start recording what's happening. You know, the thing that I wanted to actually say, perhaps we should spend a little time on today, because it commemorates Dr. Rani Kilder's passing, is to get across to the world that these weapons are in use and how deadly these weapons are. Because I think that's the information that people are missing. People don't know that their neighbors are being hit with this deadly weaponry, you know, and how deadly it is, what exactly it's doing. So, you know, there's so much actually when you look at what's going on. So we need to, I think, talk about the directed energy weapons, the projects that our militaries are running currently. They're doing weapons testing projects, but they're also doing weapons training projects. They're training people in the military and in the civilian military ops, you know, to use these weapons on other humans. They're training people, they're literally dehumanizing a large chunk of the population here, because they're dehumanizing people by telling them it's okay to point a dew at somebody's private parts, somebody's heart, and give them palpitations. It's okay to focus it on somebody's liver and destroy that liver. It's okay to point a pulsed energy projectile gun at somebody's head and give them a migraine. It's okay. That's the message that they're getting across to these people who are working as citizen soldiers in our neighborhoods, you know, and hitting us through the walls of our houses with these deadly microwave and radar weapons and sonic weapons, right? They're dehumanizing that populace, and they're encouraging them to see the victim as less than human, as just a bag of flesh and bones, you know, as just a bunch of coordinates on their little pointers, their little gun pointers, whatever they call them.
Well, this is typical. I mean, that's what they did in Nazi Germany. That's what they do all the time. You know, they tell one group of people that the other group of people is not as human as they are. And then with our little psychopaths, they're telling them, oh, how very special you are. You know, the government needs you because we have just picked the creme de la creme to handle these weapons that even a monkey could handle. You know, it's just they build them up, and they're such average, mediocre, or stupid people that they buy into it, you know, and they're desperate to buy into it. And, you know, I've always said in regard to myself that I'm just smart enough to know how smart I'm not, and to appreciate the fact that there are brilliant people around me. But these people are not of that capacity. If they're told by somebody with a badge or a uniform, you're so very special, they're, oh, I'm so very special. And they don't understand, well, why are you? You've done nothing, you know? So, but they eat it up, and they're just not bright enough to understand that they're being played for fools. And again, not only are they harming the intended victim, but I will give you an example. I probably have given it before, but I will give you an example. There was one particular neighbor in Florida who was able to use a directed energy weapon about, I'm going to say about 5 houses away. Well, how could he or she do this? They took one of these grills. It's like a super fancy grill, the huge, you know, with cast iron. They put the device inside the cast iron grill, which had a funnel for the heat to come out of. Well, guess what? That funneled the directed energy weapon a lot better from that far away, because, you know, from that far away, it would certainly spread, right? But it funneled it to hit our house through about the backyards of about 5 houses. Well, what was very interesting was that I ended up talking to some of the neighbors in between that house and my house after a particularly nasty night where the emanations were not only horrific, but what they did too was they gave me leg cramps. And I spoke to 2 women in the, you know, who were in 2 of the 5 houses in between, and they said, really? Because I got leg cramps that night too. So if you people who are not being hit, who are not being targeted, are keeping low and hoping that this is going to bypass you, You're being hit too. Those women were hit in their attempt to hurt me. They hit the homes of every single house in between our house. Not as directly, but they hit them, because directed energy weapons are not directed. And that's something to remember. Because if you're hitting your neighbor, or you and 3 people are hitting the neighbor in between you, guess what? The other 2 neighbors' devices are not stopping at that person's property line. They're hitting you too. So that's just something to, tell people to think about.
Absolutely. And I really think so. The other thing that's coming out is the Inform Your Neighborhood campaign. And I'm preparing, one of the documents I'm preparing is to show how every single wall is reflecting about 40% of the energy, so 40 to 50%. So it means that every single time somebody's hit inside a house, 50% or roughly half of the energy gets reflected or deflected off the house and hits somebody else randomly. So, if you think that there are neighborhood death squads in your neighborhood, but you're fine because you're not being hit, you might actually be hit by reflections, and your children might also be mutilated without knowing. And these weapons have long-term damage, so brain damage, cancer for sure. And that's also, yes, DNA damage. And I think that's also what Agenda 21 is aiming for. They want to have long-term DNA damage and want to impoverish entire nations to push them into even bigger debt slavery, just as a result of cancer and other degenerate diseases. But
and let's not forget, it's also the system, the control grid. It's they're able to just send the same kind of damaging frequencies, not just through these portable weapons, through that the death squads are wielding or the neighbors are wielding, but also they've rigged it up through the system that's already set up, for Wi-Fi. So through antennas, through microwave repeaters, through emitters that can be plugged anywhere. And I think you've got to watch some of Dr. Nick Bagage's videos or Barry Trower's videos to find out that these little microwave emitters can be really tiny, very easily assembled, right? With a little bit of knowledge of electronics and radiophysics, you can assemble these little microwave emitters, these little microwave weapons. You can create a microwave weapon, I understand. And so it's easy to rig the entire neighborhood. It's easy to rig your own house, the wiring in your own house. And who does that? Who does that? But the utility guys, the guys who come to fix the gas service or the furnace, or, check out the water system, or install the new smart water heater, water system in your basement. These are the guys who are actually being used. And, I really do want to talk about that, because I saw this video from Deborah Tavares recently. By the way, Deborah Tavares is back in action. She's doing videos again. She's doing talks again, radio shows again. She's brilliant. She's powerful. Her voice has to be listened to. I recommend that everybody go to stopthecrime.net and listen to her videos. One of the things she talked about, yes, absolutely. So one of the things she's talked about is the utilities. Now, she said that the utilities in the U.S. are owned, all of the utilities are owned by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. And, let me tell you, it's these guys who are running these programs, okay? To Agenda 21, etc. is, they are behind all of this. All this culling, genocide, etc., etc. This is their fatuous notion that the planet is overpopulated with smart people who might very well take them out one day, and so it's better to take them out first. That appears to be the program that they're running on currently. Because as we know, they are major criminals who are extremely thick in the head. So, because they're trying to kill off fabulous, brilliant, smart people like us. So, I mean, why would anybody want to do that? But as we know, they're slightly challenged. So these characters own the utilities. I mean, we're talking about, criminal billionaires who own the utilities. And so when we see the Verizon trucks or the Comcast trucks or the Xfinity trucks sitting in the neighborhood, possibly having concealed microwave emitters and repeaters inside them, we're not making this up. I have very frequently been hit by emanations, signals coming from those trucks coming and parking in my neighborhood. And the reason I say this is because those meters that Catherine recommends actually do work, and they are directional, although I think a spectrum analyzer might be the ultimate thing to get, right, Catherine, to actually sort of determine definitively where it's coming from, the signal?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And so the spectrum analyzer will tell you what sort of frequency you're being hit with. Getting it directionally right, depending on what it is. If it's a continuous stream, might be possible. I also found that every single time we're hit, we might also be hit with directed, what's it called, pulsed energy projectiles. And they are incredibly hard to actually pick up on, you know, because you have to point the antenna in the right direction, and your spectrum analyzer has to analyze the right frequency bin, if you like, for the pulse to pick something up. You know, it's very hard. And this, I think this is why they're using pulsed energy projectiles to literally machine gun people inside the home, inside, you know, because these pulsed energy projectiles go through walls, and you can't tell where they're coming from.
But can't you, those pulses, can't you record them in the little meters, the acoustic ones?
You can. It's just that the directionality is really, I find it really hard to find out what direction it's coming from, you know?
Well, let me ask you, if you're taking a meter reading and you're getting hit with the pulsed, if you take a piece of metal and put it in back, and then you're doing this to look where is it coming from, and you start hearing pings, isn't that going to help you really hone in on where it is?
Yeah. That is, and in fact, I found with the pulsed energy projectiles, so I've got one video that says audible and visible hits, and then the third way of detecting these pulsed energy projectiles, I happen to hold this little green device, the EM Fields Acousticom 2, into the beam right as a pulsed energy projectile was going through, and you can hear it. It sounds violent, but I have to hold this little square right into the pulse, and the beam size seems to be the tip of a finger. You know, it's like a pencil. And if you miss that, you might not get it. So I actually personally, I find that holding aluminium foil, metal foil into the beam and then actually feeling or hearing the hits is the best way to get directionality. There's a better way, but it costs about 45,000 euros of, you know, high-tech equipment. So actually one of the things, and I encourage everybody who does DIY, knows about electronics, the following idea. It's one guy suggested to me that you can basically make frames with where you hold in aluminium foil or metal foil, and you put a little what's it called, piezoelectric little sensor at the top that will detect vibrations, and as soon as you get a hit, one of these panels should record the hit. And what you could do is use aluminium foil, you know, like little sails of aluminium foil, and put it around you, and then you should be able to tell which of them was hit. You could hear it, but then the piezoelectric little thing should also say which of the panels received the hit, you know, which of them was vibrating.
And I should also say the shield that I use actually powerfully records the hit. So I literally need to attach some kind of recording device to my shield, I think. Because what it is it's a cookie sheet, okay? That's just Teflon bakeware. You can get it in the local store. Cookie sheet, it's got a steel core, and I think that's why it stops the hits from hitting me. So it's a cookie sheet, and you wrap it once with Reflectix all around, you know, use metallic foil, close it up, and then you put a layer of craft foam around it. And this foam is fabulous, okay, because you put that around it, and that's all that you need. And I, of course, I use a little, you know, duck canvas as well on top of it. So it's not sort of bright green foam showing up. So I just use a black, you know, canvas covering. But this thing, I think the foam and that bubble wrap Reflectix, because it's got these little air particles, right, trapped in these bubbles, somehow seems to really record the hits brilliantly well, because you can literally hear pulse, pulse, pulse. So literally I get up in the morning, I hold up my shield, and I figure out, they're hitting my face today. Okay, then. So I kind of know what's going on.
And I have to say that I was live on camera with Ramola. We were Skyping, and I could hear the hits. So she's being shot in the heart and shot in the head as we're talking, and I could hear the hits bouncing off the metal shield. And it's true. I've got a baking tray that I have to hold over my head when I'm sleeping at night in my bunker. And yes, you can certainly hear it. And I think that the trick is that you have the metal, which will reflect the beam, and then you've got the Reflectix and the bubble wrap. And then it actually amplifies the sound. It makes the little air cavities, the bubble wrap, it actually amplifies the sound as it's bouncing sometimes back and forth between the Reflectix as well. So it will be a speed of light, little amplified shot. Brilliant. And I think that's the way to detect it, but to collect evidence. But sorry.
Go ahead. The other thing I thought we should talk about is neurotech as well. The thing that, hits people's, changes people's moods, changes people's, those frequencies as well. But go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt.
A big thing, actually, Ramola. And in 2017, we were talking mostly about directed energy weapons. And I think 2018, we have to blow up in the entire field of neurotech. And actually, Dr. Ronnie Kilder was one of the people who was talking about this a lot of the time. And if I may just briefly share my screen, I want to point people, because today we're commemorating Dr. Ronnie Kilder, I would like to point everybody to a brilliant interview with her. It's the Basis 5 HD Ronnie Kilder Part 1 interview. It's 1 hour 20 minutes. Here you can see Dr. Ronnie Kilder. And in this interview, she's also showing the military documents. If I might just very briefly show you this video to show Dr. Ronnie Kilder, but I encourage you to listen to the whole thing and also listen to what she says about neurotech in all the other interviews that she does, because she talks about it openly. And I believe that she was murdered by Norwegian intelligence because she was revealing all this. It's the intelligence agency's most powerful weapon, the fact that they can take us over. I personally think it is because a lot of us have chips in our brain already and on the head. I'm measuring a lot of victims with chips on their head. We need to find a way to detect the chips in the head as well, in the brain, which I think are there. But I think the sad truth is that we can be taken over, certainly with frequencies, but especially if we are chipped. And Dr. Ronnie Kilder talks about that a lot. But if I may just very briefly, I'm just going to pull out my headphones and let me just turn up the microphone. So if you just listen to Ronnie Kilder just for a minute, you will hear her talk about the electromagnetic assault system, or rather the electromagnetic Holocaust system that was built up. And you will also see the intelligence agencies involved.
You don't hear this in the States because, like you mentioned, what's the difference between Finland and the US? Well, we're allowed to, say what we want and we're not harassed. You go to the States or NATO country Norway, you're harassed terribly when you open your mouth.
That is why you are harassed.
That's right, because of the information I give. And my information is all public. I mean, I have no secrecy, no secret, nothing. But there are, of course, there's a lot of work digging into old top secret papers, which are now open because of Freedom of Information Act.
And what are you getting from those papers? For what information?
Number one, that people are not told the truth. People are being lied to. I mean, that's the whole thing.
So the lies are?
On the ground. And official information is mostly lies.
So what is real? We're talking about the real ET situation at the moment, right?
Yeah. What is real is that we're not alone in the universe. That's my number two. There's no death and there's alone in the universe. I mean, when you go to an observatory in any country, then you see the little tiny spot which is called planet Earth. And then you see the universe as know it, but as we know it. And then you can't come out saying that, you feel like, but maybe an add to them.
Before we were Russia, this Russian Republic, have you had any further contacts?
The 33rd International Congress on Military Medicine in Helsinki, the year 2000. And here you can see how they can beam an individual just straight, just to one person with microwaves, and the others are totally unaffected. From vans, from all these military equipments, also from helicopters and planes, and always neighbors.
So at this point, I've got several comments to make. So this document, Dr. Ronnie Kilder revealed, as she says at the 33rd conference for, note this, military medicine in Helsinki. Okay, so this is what she revealed there. And what you can see is the NSA, GCHQ, MI5, and the Ministry of Defense setting up a microwave Holocaust system, really. And it is directly, these cell towers and these satellites are directly aimed at killing people, harassing them, mutilating them, and torturing them. That's the truth. So it is about hitting people, and it's about vans hitting people in their homes and helicopters hitting people in the homes. And notice how this diagram is going through the roof and 2 floors. Yes, hitting you in the home, hitting you in the street. And as she says, always neighbors. Very, very, very important to notice. So I just wanted to, you know, start the conversation on Dr. Kilder. I'm not sure, was it possible to hear her words? Could you hear it? Okay, so let me just stick in the headphones again. And one of the things I wanted to say, I've got a few comments to say about this interview with Dr. Ronnie Kilder, because she talks about, so, okay, one of the things, my personal take on this now that I would like to add in as well, the entire UFO thing, I think what the intelligence agencies are doing is that they're profiling you from youngest age. And Dr. Ronnie Kilder at some point revealed that since her youngest years, since her teenage years, she was always interested in UFOs and aliens, and is there life out there in the universe. I actually think that what the intelligence agencies are doing, they are profiling us, and they are hooking into our deeply held beliefs, which they have known about because they've monitored us as children and listened to many more conversations than we can ever imagine. Okay, and we're all being profiled. So because Dr. Ronnie Kilder believed in UFOs, I think she was strongly reinforced in that belief. I personally think that a lot of the UFO stuff is actually military equipment being tested on civilians and being sold as UFOs, being sold as alien landings, and being sold as many other things like alien abductions. I personally think all of this is entirely the military abducting people for human experimentation, but dressing up and using mirrors and, you know, sci-fi Hollywood effects to make them believe that these are aliens. As a physicist personally, because of the physical limitations on the distance of travel between stars and planets, it's extremely hard, you know, for those things to be true that I personally think the intelligence agencies want us to be true, which is that we're run by a bunch of aliens. I mean, it's possible, but then again, what I see is that we're run by a bunch of morons. So I go for the military moron theory any day before I go for the alien takeover, you know, hypothesis. But Dr. Ronnie Kilder says a lot about near-death experiences. She says a lot also about what she calls automatic writing in the very same interview, where she says she attended a group of spiritual people and they all could do automatic writing. And at some point, her arm started moving by itself and making the number 8. Now, I think Dr. Ronnie Kilder at that time did not know about the power of bio-robotization and remote control through the head chips that I suspect she had. Okay, I rather suspect that Dr. Ronnie Kilder, like myself, was brain chipped and was head chipped, and she didn't know about bio-robotization. I personally think that what she reports is actually direct evidence for the intelligence agencies having brain mapped her, had interfaced with her brain chips and actually used bio-robotization to move her arm. Chris Burton, interviewed by Ramola, already describes this sort of bio-robotization. So I want people to be aware that this technology exists. It's totally mundane. It is a bit of high-tech science, but it's entirely within our realm, not alien science. But also keep in mind that so I basically want to say, don't discard Dr. Ronnie Kilder because you say, oh, this whole UFO stuff is rubbish. No, instead think she's human and some criminal gang actually tapped into her beliefs and is trying to fool her, and meanwhile is doing horrific and rather cynical, sadistic experiments on her as well. You know, and at the end of, sorry, just one last sentence. And there's evidence for that because at the end of the interview, she's also revealing how her neighbors are targeting her and are basically putting posts into her post box on a Sunday and stuff like that. So she was a victim, and you have to kind of factor that in. But everything else she's saying, it's actually the truth.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, just to comment on, you know, just these things, you know, the UFOs, etc. There's no doubt. I think there's lots of people, you know, even from the world of ufology, who kind of make it their business to write, you know, research this and write books about it and everything, who do actually say that the military is indeed running massive psyops. You know, that they do have some deadly planes that, you know, they're trying to pass off as alien, etc. So, and the alien abduction scenario as well. The military is involved, etc. I think that's coming from the ufology world as well. I kind of read that, you know, look at that stuff with, you know, I really don't know the truth, but that information is out there. People seem to have an awareness of the military, and we all know the military is hiding stuff, right? We all know about secrecy, so who knows, right? I think what Dr. Rani Kilder says about the whole alien phenomena is that there are beings, I think, from other worlds or other dimensions that are actually good beings. She actually talks about good beings and people who might, and beings who might help humans. So she's always had an interest from very young in the paranormal, and as you say, with automatic writing and so forth. So I think that whole world exists in certain people's belief systems and awarenesses, as you say, and certainly in Dr. Ron Kilder's. But the message that I think that she's given across in many of her conferences is that we don't know how powerful we are as human beings, that we have many just pass into a different plane or a different dimension. And, as you know, many people have that belief system as well. The biorobotizing thing, I just wanted to say one thing about it. It's true. I think what Chris Burton is reporting is very, very important and what people must be aware of today. This is also, in the story of Rohini Desai that I covered, the Canadian woman who is now in jail for stabbing somebody who ultimately died. And now she complained that she had a brain chip, that she was being spoken to in her head by one person. And she also complained that her body was being taken over. So she literally is presenting as a real life, current day Manchurian candidate. And that is kind of the thing that Chris Burton is also reporting. He's reporting total takeover, takeover of his limbs, takeover of his body. And so we have to be very aware, as Catherine says, that technology does indeed exist. And I don't know if it completely relates to what Dr. Rani Kilder says, but certainly you could make that argument, I suppose, that biorobotizing is something that people need to be aware of. The only reason I say that is because Dr. Kilder has not spoken in the same terms of being taken over to such an extent as Chris Burton has spoken of, and some other people have spoken of a clone inhabiting their bodies, in a sense, and literally being unable to resist when that clone tries to take over. Or when a certain energy is put into a portion of their brain, which makes a portion of their bodies move. And I think many people have actually reported that, where they can't resist when suddenly their arm is moved or their fingers are moved. And that has to do with, portions of their motor cortex being accessed. So literally there are many technologies, it appears, like many different kinds of neurotech that these guys, are keeping secret, but they're still rolling out and using on humans.
Absolutely. And also, when I went to the military HQ, the senior officer of the Nachrichtendienst des Bundes, Swiss intelligence, bless him, thank goodness he was totally dumb. But one of the things that I was talking to him about directed energy weapons, and at some point he said to me, there are lots of people coming here and just reporting nonsense, like being attacked with directed energy weapons and having a brain chip like you. And I was like, oh, really? Did I say I had a brain chip? I didn't say that. And he actually blurted out, the poor little moron, that he knew I had a brain chip. So wonderful, right? So the NDB knows I have a brain chip and they're triggering it for sure. And I can confirm that, yes, they're moving my fingers, they're closing my fist and opening my fist against my will. For example, they can move my limbs as well. But if you have, for example, the sort of events where you are, one of the things they did is they smashed up, I think, 7 plates when I was away for 7 days, oh no, 6 plates when I was away for 7 days. And I thought, why did they not complete the number 7? And then shortly after I was holding a glass and then they just opened my fist and smash went the 7th glass. That's the sort of bullshit the intelligence agencies do. But in that moment, they opened my fist and I couldn't control it. I didn't just drop the glass, they opened my hand. So this is biorobotization, and it's always part of this sort of stuff. So yes, for sure, the intelligence agencies are doing it. And sorry, I just want to link in, because I think this sort of brain chipping, Dr. Ronnie Kilder knew about it, and she was talking about nanotechnology passing the blood-brain barrier. but I'm not sure if she was aware that a very large fraction of the population is already brain chipped with possibly nanotech that passes through the blood-brain barrier, and then assembles itself into little chips. Okay, I think that technology exists as well. But either way, I want to, I'm not an expert on this, but I want to refer absolutely everybody to the book by Dr. Hildegard Stanninger, called The Global Brain Chip and Mesogens. Please do read it. It's important. Okay, so this is not, we're not making it up. Dr. Hildegard Stanninger is one of the people who is helping victims. She's an expert in the field. She's an industrial toxicologist, and she knows about contamination with nanotechnology and so on and so on. So this is sadly real, but it all goes back to the big whistleblowing that Dr. Ronnie Kilder actually did. So I also want everybody to know that out of the members of the joint investigation team, most of us have experienced biorobotization, for sure, of one form or another. And then the other thing I want to point people to, if you are into researching cartel signaling, like I am in Hollywood movies and adverts, watch for the image. And actually, if you research presentations on SlideShare, for example, on body area networks, look for the image of a brain with little glowing dots inside. I think you need to know that those would be your brain chips, okay? So I see the symbology over and over, also music videos, so we are being brain chipped, sadly. This is the truth.
Yeah, I can tell you that, this is something I think I've revealed to some of you guys, and I've spoken about it. But I can tell you this was it was, I think, in the summer of 2016 when I went to London. And the night before we flew out, I had a very strange experience. I was sitting or lying down on the couch, and my right hand began to lift up by itself. And I just watched this, and I could not believe it. And I tried to push my hand down, and what I felt was the most intense magnetic force. It's almost like you have two magnets trying to repel each other. That's the kind of force that I felt. I felt as if I was trying to repel, a like magnetic force, trying to push my hand down, trying to take control of my hand again. I could not do it. And that's when I began to think, well, maybe it's some part of my motor cortex that's being hit. So I lifted a shield and put it up against my head with my other hand, and that's when I could move my hand. So you see, whether there's a brain chip involved or whether it's the motor cortex that's being involved, I don't know. But that's the thing that stopped it. That's the only thing that stopped it. And I'm not reporting what Chris Burton is reporting, because he's been reporting something that's sequential and progressive over time. I'm definitely not reporting anything like that. This was a very unique, insular, secluded incident where my hand went up by itself. But there was another occasion, and it's interestingly enough connected with that same trip. It was when I was flying back from London to Boston. And there was a guy sitting in a seat, kind of diagonal across from me behind, he was in the window seat, I was in the middle seat on the far right row or column of seats. And what happened there was my right hand, my left hand, the last little finger, the pinky finger of my left hand began to lift. Okay, and I turned around and looked at this guy. He was kind of looking at an iPad and looking really gleeful and happy with himself and doing something and looking across at me and looking at his iPad. And that's when I figured out, oh my God, So this could very well be what you're talking about, Catherine. This could be a BCI scenario, okay? So again, I took my shield up. By the way, I was able to carry my little cookie sheet shields on the plane. So if anybody is traveling, please carry a cookie sheet shield with you. Carry it everywhere. I carry mine everywhere. So I stuck it behind me and, shut off access to my brain. And that's when my finger became mine again. So that could very well be a BCI scenario. Just, realize that he was kind of actually looking at the computer. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, BCI stands for brain to computer. So brain-computer interface, BCI. Yeah, and this is what the military is now researching. No, it's like, no, they've researched it. No, this is what the military is now taking us over with. And, I think, most people on the JIT have been taken over. So most of us have these
I should say I have brain chips. With the RFID detector, I have determined that I don't just have one brain chip, which, by the way, gets super hot at a certain spot in my head. I don't just have one. I apparently have several, according to the detector. So,
actually, talking about heating brain chips. So yes, I've got this one bug detector, and I've been encouraging people to buy it because it's the simplest one to use, and it does work. And people are sending me more and more videos showing pretty much chips in exactly the same places. So look for the top of the head, back of the head, neck, and then there's certainly chips on the side, but the strong ones are always top, head, back, and neck. And it's true, very many people are chipped.
And so when you say, how do you get chipped? You see, that's the other part of the argument. How have these chips appeared in my head? I'm sorry, I never consented to having a brain chip. I have no recollection of being brain chipped or giving consent. Of course I didn't give consent. But I have been in the hospital overnight, and I've slept in my own house overnight. So there are two issues over here that we need to be aware of, and I think actually Dr. Kilder talks about both. Medical professionals are involved in the chipping of people, in inserting wireless bands, body area networks, which consist of a system of chips. So this is basic telemetry. People are being implanted. And as you say, Catherine, there are so many different ways of getting implanted now. There's syringes, there's nanochips, self-assembling nanochips, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the medical world is indeed involved. And this is something some people can't even take on board. They can't even imagine that a doctor would do this to you.
And exactly. And in fact, Dr. Onikilda's case shows that doctors are not only involved in chipping, doctors are tasked with and involved with the murder of whistleblowers and patients. I personally think Hospital Erasmus in Brussels shows it in detail. Our hospitals are being converted into warfare units, and they're basically culling stations. So a lot of people in the UK have already reported having their elderly parents literally murdered in the hospital, killed under rather suspicious circumstances. People in the UK have reported organ harvesting happening in hospitals. And I personally have experienced my head chips being worked really hard in Hospital Erasmus Brussels, in the patient rooms, and including in the operating theatre where I was with our colleague Melanie Vrichan. So Hospital Erasmus in Brussels is being wired up for 21st century warfare. And I can also confirm that a lot of the doctors whom I met were criminals. They were actually criminals. They were not doctors. They did not behave like doctors. They are criminals recruited to harm patients as much as they possibly can. And if I may share my screen in honor of Dr. Onikilda, who was murdered today, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. I think she died in 2015. Yes, 2015. Or 16. I have to check. Sorry about this. But what I want to show is basically the article before she was murdered. 2015. Yes, I did say it right. So Dr. Onikilda was murdered on the 8th of February 2015. That's when she died. But actually, the process of murdering her was a very convoluted one, because she lived in Norway, and Norwegian intelligence irradiated her extremely intensely. Sorry. I was just hit in the throat when I wanted to say that she was murdered by Norwegian intelligence, okay? And because I was hit in the throat, I'll say it exactly 3 times. We have evidence that Dr. Onikilda was murdered by Norwegian intelligence because she experienced an extremely intense attack living in Norway. And she sent an email in a panic to her friends. And one of her friends was Henning Witte, the lawyer living in Sweden. And this is one of her last emails sent on the 14th of January 2015. And she says, "Thank you, so-and-so. I was badly attacked 17th to 18th December with psychotronic weapons, laying at the floor with extreme pains until after midnight. I had to call an ambulance 19th to go to hospital, where malpractice started from the first minute. Male doctor hit my right kidney so hard that my urine was bloody the next day. For 3 days, female doctor did not touch me at all. I had said it all comes from beaming. She said, no one will believe you. I said, insiders do. Even my heart was not listened to. She stood 2 to 3 meters away from me all 3 days until I said I want to go home. And did I have a serious illness now, which they have caused with radiation? And it was now activated. After some bed rest, I got assistance to travel with a wheelchair to Finland, where I will have all tests redone. Finland is not a NATO country, having to follow US orders, and it is right now much better for me to be here and go to hospital here. So at this point, she was in Finland. In addition, my old cat disappeared, and at night I got a flash vision. They hit and smashed her skull with some wooden plank. Even if they tried to eliminate me by giving 2 times an injection I was allergic to, I will survive, says my automatic writing, even to be able to perform later. But it takes time. I'm totally out of energy still, mostly in bed all days. Please do not spread the word. But if you know any healers, I would appreciate to get their help, because I try to get better only with alternative methods. And if it would succeed, it would be a medical miracle showing the power of thought and healing. Greetings to so-and-so, love and light, Ronnie. Okay, so one of the things I want to draw attention to is, first of all, she went to a hospital, and this is something we know from putting it together. She went to a hospital she didn't want to go to. She asked to be taken to another hospital. So Norwegian intelligence was actually controlling the ambulance drivers and diverted her to a hospital where they were controlling the doctors, or they had placed criminals into the hospital already for extermination. So when she arrived, a male doctor actually punched her in the kidney, all right? And then also, very curious, the fact that the female doctor stood 2 to 3 meters away from her for several days. This might imply that she was poisoned, and they knew she was poisoned with either some bacterium or some toxin or something, or maybe radioactivity, I don't know.
Or she was being hit. They were sending beams to her, you know, and they knew she was being hit.
Exactly. But basically, these doctors, and one of the things I want to say is, for the investigation, I would like to have information on who these doctors were. So anybody who can start an investigation, find it out. I don't think that Norway is by itself capable of actually bringing these murderers to justice, because they are in deep capture. Norway is entirely filled with military bunkers and is being used as a military base. It's a very small country, very easy to deep capture. And basically, they are killers on the loose in Norway. There are doctors who are killers, who murdered the former chief medical officer of Finland, and they are still not brought to justice. So we need these killers arrested and put into prison for life, because this was premeditated murder. But as I say, I'm amazed that no one has started an investigation. But we know the date, we know when she was in the hospital, and I ask people to start this investigation by themselves, because we need the killers, and we cannot trust Norway or Norwegian police to do it at all. You know?
And I think in her book she talks about Norway and Norwegian intelligence being particularly ruthless.
Yes, I'm not surprised, because I think what she saw is the end result of deep capture. So the intelligence agencies, I mean, by themselves, most of the people who get recruited are psychopathic degenerates. But, you know, the top will be psychopathic. They will want to network with other psychopaths, because that's more efficient, you know, a more efficient kill, if you like. And if you have a small country like Norway, which is tiny, but it has this coastline with fjords and perfect for submarine stations and whatnot, you know, and its geopolitical location, you will have, you know, all these NATO, Nazi warfare, psychopathic degenerates moving into Norway and specifically putting in ruthless people. So actually, by the way, I think the same is true of Switzerland. It's a tiny country. I think it's the covert NATO HQ here. And I can confirm that the military police in Switzerland and the intelligence agencies are totally psychopathic. They are utter criminals, you know. And I think the same effect will be seen all over in these small countries. But it's horrible.
Or
and
large
I think
countries. I mean,
yes.
just look at the USA.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to say which country is worse, you know. But I think pretty much what Karen saw, this kind of ruthless psychopathy and NSA, that is, you know, also present in these countries, you know. And then now Norway is a military base, so that's why it's so bad.
And, you know, we should also not forget that the CIA is where all of that mind control tech originated, right? All of the dirty mind control experiments started with the CIA, and in fact preceded the CIA. Before they even came into existence as an agency with that name, there were other groups, right? What is it? The OSS, and there was another one. I forget, the OSI. I don't know. But this was prior to the establishment of the CIA in 1947, which also saw the establishment of the National Security Act, which permitted the sealing unto secrecy of various projects and focuses that the government was engaged in. One little tidbit, I'm reading Operation Mind Control currently by Walter Board. Very important book. I think all of us have to read it because it traces the history of what's been happening. And what he said was, you know, you've all heard of the movie The Manchurian Candidate, right? Apparently it was made into a movie. But it's based on a book written by Richard Condon. He wrote it in 1958. And that was apparently after 18 years of research already existent in these areas of mind control and behavior modification, narco-hypnosis, etc., which, as we know, the CIA worked on all through the 50s and 60s and 70s, which kind of came out in the 70s through the Church Committee. And then they didn't even get a rap on the fist, right? They just went on, they went underground, they continued doing what they're doing. And now at this point, they've surfaced in the military, the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Doctorate, the Air Force Research Lab, the US Naval Research Lab, etc., etc. So now it's okay. Trauma-based mind control is A-okay. As American as apple pie now.
Or so they think.
Yeah.
So they think.
No, they're still running it. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, they've brought it into the present age. They're running it, and they've brought it into, now it's also in the Department of Justice through the neurocrime programs, the predictive policing programs, the pre-crime programs. And through these means, they are writing in people like you and me, into their little lists for neuromonitoring, for non-stop 24/7 neuromonitoring, because it's so important to monitor your brain and my brain for their purposes, because you see, our brains need to be modified.
Yeah, exactly. I think also one of the things that we can reveal, I think, because none of us are embarrassed about it, because it's not our fault, it's a crime. In my case, it's not just, I mean, right now, part of the reason why I talk so fast is because I have to basically fight this computer that's working my head chips. My head is, people don't notice, being cracked. It feels like my head is cracking as I'm talking because my head chips are being turned on for maximum pain. But I can also say that Swiss intelligence is not just monitoring my brain. They are also monitoring my vagina because my genitals are chipped. And what point might be in that for national security? I mean, go figure, right? I mean, at this point, and I'm not alone, I think every single victim.
But you see, this is where we talk, you know, that's where they've got a fine line between surveillance and torture. And they're daring to call it surveillance. They have indeed filled up people's bodies with chips. And they are sending signals. They are sending radio frequency signals to people's chips inside vaginas, inside breasts, probably inside penises, and inside, you know, various body parts, livers, gallbladders, hearts.
Yeah. And I think at this point, one of the things that we can totally blow out, and we should rub it into every single police officers and heads of intel's faces until we grind them into dust, ideally, administratively speaking, is the fact that all this is a one big lie. It is not even surveillance. They couldn't catch criminals to save their life. It is not. It is about the sexual perversion of utterly degenerate, you know, mostly middle-aged men. That's what it is about. It is a death cult and it is a sex cult. And the people who are running intelligence and the people who are running the police and also a lot of people in the judiciary are just addicted to killing and sex. And that's it. There is no surveillance. Most of the so-called terrorist attacks are totally fake. You know, it is all one big lie. As Dr. Ronnie Kilder said, everything that is released officially is one big lie. Absolutely everything, you know, and what we are, you know, I am so desperate to wake people up. And I want to say, look, it's not even surveillance. They're not catching terrorists. They are training them, you know. And another thing, talking to Andreas von Stockhausen, that's very interesting. And, you know, I'm going to preempt a bit of a, you know, sneak preview here. We know that all the wars have been staged. And I want every single soldier and every single family member who had a death in one of these recent wars to get as much information about the precise details of these deaths of these soldiers in whatever situation they were, because I personally think that every single death and every single interaction was actually staged. I am listening to stories where I said, hang on, Andreas, does this actually make sense? And as an investigator, I'm reading between the lines, and I have some whiff, and circumstantial evidence to say that a lot of these so-called, accidents and just interactions in a war are part of the one big game plan. And the people who end up dying, there was a plan for them to die all along, because both sides of this war are pretty much staged, much more staged than you realize, And when there are these terrorist attacks and roadside bombs, and who actually gets to die in a roadside bomb and not, I think it's all part of one big war plan. So it's all one big fat lie. And when the police is asking for money for, neuromonitoring and pre-crime, pre-crime, give me a break. You can't even get the criminals post-crime. That's what I want to say to them. What do you want to do pre-crime? And the answer is, masturbate, I guess. That's the conclusion I reach.
Well, they validate the pre-crime theory by poking at somebody until they lash out, and then they say, see, I told you. That's just ludicrous.
Yeah, that's right. Because you see, anybody who's got like a brain in their heads and who knows how to speak up and defend themselves is considered an extremist now. So if you're in a private conversation with a family member and you're yelling at them because they're stepping on your toes, you're being recorded and you're being written off as an extremist who needs mental health intervention by our mental health state. And, the point you're making about pre-crime also, they can't even catch the criminals. They can't even catch the criminals, particularly when they had intelligence agencies and they had police stations and when they had security agencies. What do you think, right? They can't catch those criminals, those utter criminals who are running these programs, because these are the most criminal programs on the planet. And this is the message I think that we need to echo for Dr. Kilda and put out there for people. These weapons are incredible. These weapons are human manipulation and human bodily destruction weapons. These weapons are human mind takeover and brain takeover weapons. Mood takeover weapons. They are human manipulation weapons. These weapons are in your local police station. They are through wall surveillance radar, right? They are infrared guns that the local police are using. They're in the fusion centers, and now they're in the hands of your neighbors who are being trained to hit your little ankle as you go up and down the steps, or track some other part of your body. So these are very deadly weapons. They are all over the place. And what they are producing is not surveillance. They're producing torture. They're producing torture in the human body. And so we've got a cult of torture going on currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the more I actually look into it and the more victim cases I come across and analyze, the more it's clear that, so first of all, this is a global Holocaust system, okay? They want to kill as many people as possible, and they want to kill them in the most torturous and horrific way possible. And because it's a death and a sex cult, they want to have the killing with as much fucking as they can get into it. And sorry to put it like that, but this is basically what it is. So one of the things I observed is that they are trying to get the neighbors addicted to voyeurism. So I think our inside surveillance is being broadcast to our direct neighbors, which might explain why my neighbor downstairs is getting off on this, the guy who got involved, So basically, I would estimate, based on what I've seen, that the modus operandum of the intelligence agencies is to go through a neighborhood and recruit all the dirty old farts, yes, and start with them because they are perfect for surveillance. They are addicted to voyeurism, broadcast all the inside surveillance to them, and then get them to organize all the gang stalking. And
I think along those lines, Catherine, I just remembered, I don't know if we have time to do it today, but I do need to write an article about it. I received an extraordinary document, and I shared it with Karen. She's also seen it. It's from an ex-army person, a military veteran in the U.S., a woman military veteran, who, from everything I understand, is also very beautiful, actually. She's actually, she just had looks, okay? And so what she's reporting is there is a torture club in her vicinity. But these guys who are hitting her with V2K and having conversations that are in her head, using military technology, and are living literally around her and tormenting her in various other ways. These guys are running a torture club. So what she's reporting is a torture club, which is by invitation only, apparently. But literally, we're talking about human trafficking here. We're talking about money being involved here.
Yeah.
So they're able to recruit people to come and operate the torture equipment, which is this weaponry, the so-called non-lethal weaponry. I think perhaps we need to start calling it for what it is. It's torture equipment.
Yeah.
So these people are being recruited and being permitted to operate this torture equipment on her, on this person who is beautiful. Just because she, it's some kind of weird, as you say, it's a sex and death cult, and some kind of weird way of getting off on torturing and tormenting beautiful women. So
I think it is. And it fits in because when you look at what they did to Dr. Ronnie Kilder, and when you look at all the cases, especially of the women, but men are sexually tortured just the same, it is about sexual denigration, and it's all about denigrating intelligent women. And Dr. Ronnie Kilder was highly intelligent, and every single female victim case I get, and also most of the male cases, there's always an element of sexual torture. But I think what we have to be aware of is not just the remote NSA. It might be the dirty old geezer at the end of your street. Because I think this entire AI-enabled, super war system that they're building up, they want to have neighborhood kill systems. So I think the driving element of this is basically sexual energy and sexual perversion. Because men get addicted to that. That's the whole point. That's why they were pumping the entire porn industry over decades, so that, you get entire generations of men addicted to this stuff. Then you give them this sort of technology. And this explains, I think, why every single victim case has this massive element of sexual torture. And so we're way past assuming that the intelligence agencies do any surveillance or law enforcement enforces the law or catches criminals. No, I think the sad truth is that they are engaged in masturbation. Basically, they will masturbate the planet to death. And that's my conclusion. Welcome to 2018, literally. This is it,
And they're permitting little groups of people to go around in indulging their pornographic fantasies, in this fashion, and also engage in torture. These are sadistic enterprises. They're encouraging the dehumanizing and the sadistic assault of people. So they're literally encouraging the building up of these little torture clubs and porn clubs in our midst. So all of these are also part of that takedown of society, sort of changing society, quote unquote, transforming society, which these lunatics are trying to do. They're trying to transform society into a place of absolute perversion.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I want to say, and this is so horrific because the more victim cases I listen to, the more I see the pattern. And I think the entire human trafficking, sex trafficking element of this is much bigger than we realize. And Millicent was fantastic in drawing our attention to the fact that, what they are doing is they are trafficking women of all ages. And as she was told, I think by an FBI or police officer, that there's a huge market for torturing women in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's absolutely massive. So what we're actually dealing with is sex trafficking of the entire planet, pretty much, And one of the things I really, I wish I could just convey what I've seen, right? Because to all those people who are reticent to speak up or are scared, I can tell you that you're not dealing with some super powerful, super army of super soldiers or, AI-enabled bots yet. What you're dealing with 90% of the time right now is some dirty old men, some pervy old farts and pedophiles. I'm sorry, if you're scared of them, we're going to lose this war. But if you just stand up, these people are so pathetic. They're so dumb. They're so spineless and utterly gormless. When we actually pull down the curtain and look at who it was who was doing all this, we will be just disgusted, you know?
And I think that's a very good point to emphasize, Catherine. We are in a war. Some people don't know it. Some people don't know we are in a war. And what we're in a war for is this, you know, against this kind of criminality and evil and perversion, and literally criminals engaging in perverted activities and engaging in positively criminal and perverted, if you can imagine that, which is what pedophilia is, right? And everything else. All of the sadistic torture clubs and torture of women in their 60s, etc. People who are perverts and criminals, who are hiding in our fusion centers, intelligence agencies, security agencies, using secrecy, using classification, using the cover story, you know, of national security to hide behind. These perverts and criminals have started to wage war. They are waging war on the good people in society. They are waging war on people with spine, people with integrity, people who whistleblow, people who speak out against corruption, people who are smart, who are intelligent, and they are definitely waging war on women, because women have been speaking out, you know, and do speak out within the family, you know, within the neighborhood. Women don't take it from men at the level of the family. Women may be, you know, stepped on in the corporate workplace, which they still are, but inside the family, women do speak up and speak out. This is a war against women, you know. And of course, it's a war by lunatic, perverted men against men as well. So I don't want to say it's only against women. It's against men and women of integrity, of spine, of courage, and of voice power and intelligence. So literally, it's a good versus bad thing, you know, which we hear about a great deal, but that's how it kind of filters down to, in my estimation. It's criminals inside these agencies who are waging war against good people in society. These agencies need to be dissolved. The secrecy needs to go. You know, the fusion centers need to be ripped apart.
Oh, they sure do. Absolutely. I mean, to design a private entity so that you cannot FOIA them shows predisposition to criminality. They were planning for it. And I would like to remind people that the Department of Homeland Security hired 2 consultants to help them design the Department of Homeland Security. One was Marcus Wolf, who worked for the East German Communist Stasi police, and the other was, I believe, Yevgeny Primakov, who worked for the KGB. Now, what does the KGB and Stasi, what do they have in common as far as protecting their homelands? No, they oppressed their homelands. This showed that the Department of Homeland Security was never meant to protect us. It was meant to oppress us and slaughter us ultimately. So that absolutely has to go. And I was told by someone, they said that the Department of Homeland Security does not take complaints from people, that's handled through the Department of Justice. So if you want to write and complain about Department of Homeland needing to be abolished, then direct it to the head of the Department of Justice at this point.
Maybe we should start a campaign, Karen. Let's dissolve the Homeland Security Department because it's just running terrorism in America. That's what I think we need to do in 2018. We need to start getting real, say things as it is, you know, say things for what they are, name things for what they are, and make our demands, you know, in public for some public attention to these absolute atrocious crimes.
I mean, Trump appointed Kirstjen Nielsen as the new department, the head of DHS. And so we may want to mention her when we write to the Department of Justice and say she needs to oversee its dismantlement because it serves no purpose. And she needs to oversee. She needs to oversee the prosecution and imprisonment of domestic terrorists hiding within the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes.
The domestic terrorists running a massive domestic criminal terrorist operation using stealth weaponry on people. Okay, and while that's, you know, inevitably we're going to have to ask to clear out a great deal more. Look at the FBI, for instance. You know,
it's not viable. I mean, you don't know. You might as well call ISIS for help. You know.
Absolutely.
But they're also a part of it.
They are.
Oh, I know. That's the whole problem, is that half the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice and FBI they're just intermixed with law enforcement and criminals.
Yes.
You know, it is like, I mean, if you have a brain tumor, a lot of surgeons can go in and just take that tumor out. And a lot of the time, thank God, you know, you may be fine. But when you have a certain type of brain tumor, and I don't remember the name of it, but it basically is little tiny modules interspersed throughout the brain. There's no hope. There's no hope. I had a friend who's I think it was his wife who had this condition. There was no hope. They couldn't treat her. She died. They couldn't go in and get a million tiny modules that were growing cancerous cells in her brain. There's no way to help her with that. But that's what we're looking at with the Department of Homeland Security. There is no salvation, and there may be nothing to save at NSA. I mean, there was just a recent article that says that NSA has now removed the terms openness and integrity from their core values. I said, well, so that leaves them with rotten to the core values, doesn't it? You know.
Well, they got a bit honest, didn't they?
Yeah, now they're being honest. Okay, well, you know, we're not going to have honesty and openness as our core values anymore because we're basically traitors.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for letting us know.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you see, they're working for Agenda 21. That's the other side of it. You've got the NSA and the DHS working for Agenda 21. How do you like that?
Yeah.
They are working to let international, you know, groups come in and take over America. How treasonous is that?
This is super serious. I don't think people understand how serious this is. Otherwise, they would be screaming and running around in the streets. But I think, I think NSA is controlling a lot of the satellites that can kill a lot of Americans and kill pretty much a lot of,
NSA is controlling all the satellites in the world. You know, see my interview with Susie Dawson. That's what she's revealing to the world, looking at those documents of, you know, interaction and agreement between all the intel agencies. NSA can use the satellites and hardware, surveillance hardware of any country in the world, and they are.
I still have to figure out what this, whatever it's called, the geospatial, what's it organization is doing. I've lost track. Right. But anyway, these people,
National Geospatial.
Exactly. Like, oh gosh, I rather suspect that what they have is within the intelligence world, several fronts as well. And they have shipped out their, you know, their criminals absolutely everywhere. But NSA, you know, is in deep capture. They are utter total psychopathic degenerates. And one of the things that I think is it's basically the candle that shows you how degenerate they are, is that when Admiral Mike Rogers came in, for an entire year, Karen continues to be mutilated by NSA and he did nothing. Now, at this point, I think civil society has to say, okay, the biggest problem is how the hell are we going to recapture these organizations, because they are killing us, okay? And they will launch a killing spree if we try to get them. But I think in this window where they haven't launched their killing spree yet, we need to start sending the stop right now signal to psychopaths. And unfortunately, psychopaths don't respond to anything but death. So I think we need some orderly court-martials, and especially Admiral Mike Rogers being an admiral falls under, I think, martial legislation, and hopefully there's still some death penalty left. But I mean, for the fact that Karen was tortured for an entire year by NSA and Admiral Mike Rogers did nothing but actually extended the torture and mutilation of Karen, for that alone, he should get the death penalty. End of story. And we start with him and we continue with all the others.
Well, he's running away. He's retiring.
Doesn't matter.
You know,
he can still be held.
He's running away. He's running away.
And did you notice, Karen, they protect their own. If you notice, there was an article recently about, what's his name, George Ellard, the Inspector General who was accused of retaliation against a whistleblower inside NSA. Well, he's getting off scot-free now.
He's the one who basically told security end her career. She's reporting something we don't want her to report. George Ellard was the guy who basically, he's the one who ended my career. He told NSA security to fabricate lies and accusations and stalk and harass me and get rid of me, because I have dared to ask him to look into why the head of weapons in space had taken my 6 months series of reports that were award-winning, and I was told that the estimate was that they had saved at least 2,000 lives. Why did my boss, the head of Weapons in Space, tell the promotion board that this was the work of a woman he was sleeping with? So that ended my career.
Right.
George Allen was sleeping with?
No, the head of Weapons in Space.
The head of Weapons.
And multiple other males in the management of Weapons in Space. So that shows you she was compromising the male managers there. And I believe that's called a honeypot.
Yeah.
And behind a honeypot is usually blackmail and espionage. And George Ellard had no desire to look into what was blackmail and espionage. Well, why would he not want to do that?
I think he was doing the same, bitch. Frankly, I mean, sorry. I think one of the questions I still have from last time, and I'm sorry about my language, but I get so angry because this is the biggest national security issue. And we've got these utterly dumb men following their dicks, being morons. And we have the biggest national security issue here. I mean, for that alone, I think they should be castrated and then beheaded, frankly. But anyway, one of the questions I have, last time we revealed that she was sleeping with, I think, 12 men in total.
Well, I don't know how many, but I was told by a witness that she had pretty much slept her way through the management of Weapons in Space. And this is a witness who had walked in on something that shouldn't be going on in a professional setting.
What could that possibly be?
There was no question how she got her promotion or got my promotion, according to this other woman.
I think, usually these sort of rumors are, amazingly reliable because people are resentful when this sort of stuff happens. But when you have, she's sleeping her way through the entire management. It must be at least, that many people. How do you manage them all? How do you date as many people as that at the same time? I mean, to work yourself through it in a reasonable amount of time. And this is a serious question for investigation, because what you shag one guy at lunchtime and then you say, oh, sorry, can't see you until Wednesday after next because, on Thursday I'm shagging General so-and-so, then I'm shagging Admiral so-and-so, and then I'm busy with Colonel Watson. And like, what? I mean, frankly, the reason why I bring it up is because I actually think, and this is a very serious point, she wasn't dating them all individually. I think it might be the case, and it would fit the sex and death cult, and this is serious, that there might be some sort of NSA gangbangs happening once per week, maybe, because I have evidence for other institutions where this is happening, which means, and this is serious, people, when they're generating the control files, they have to see each other do stuff that they can be, held accountable for. So many men raping the same woman is actually one of these, rituals that they do. But I'm putting it out there for people to think about it, that these sort of rituals might be going on at NSA. So not just her with individual guys, but her with groups of guys, so that the guys can see each other and they know that they have to keep this entire war machinery and Holocaust going, because if one of them pulls out, the others will pull the trigger on him and say, this is what you've done. This is absolutely serious. I cannot understand how this woman could have slept her way through so many guys unless there was this happening.
Who knows, right? And as for keeping that war machinery going, I just wanted to interject a little point, because this guy, George Ellard, is in the news again. And the reason he's in the news again is because the acting Assistant Secretary of Defense, Stephanie Barnum, has found Mr. George Ellard free of all allegations.
Oh, then maybe I need to write her.
Yeah, maybe you need to write her, and maybe we need to make a big hoo-ha about this, because she's clearly missing some key information. He has now been, reinstated, or, he's back in action. He's being considered for a proper retirement and whatever. So this is in U.S. News and World Report. So, but again, very interestingly, a woman, Assistant Secretary of Defense. And the point that I want to make over here is that this is the Assistant Secretary of Defense. Okay, we're talking about the NSA, which is the National Security Agency connected to the military. There is an interest in keeping the military war machinery functioning and active, in protecting their own and shielding their own, And what they did to Karen is inexplicable. So it really points to that kind of weird private thing going on in there, that they want to hide, that they want to keep among themselves. how could this guy be reinstated? How could, how could, he have been so-called tried by the Secretary of Defense and found that he did not retaliate against an agency whistleblower?
Yeah. Well, I think, and this is why I'm not just banging on about this because I want to be as lewd on camera as possible. We need to think about it seriously, because one option how this can happen is revealed in Melanie Richard's case, because when she was fighting the custody for her child, which was taken away because she started complaining about the many body implants that she was being mutilated with and crippled with, they took her son away, and when she fought for it, the judge, the female judge, right, was accused of being a member of a pedophile ring. Family court being the conduit for the pedophile rings, and the judge was accused by a pediatrician to be involved. And this pediatrician or surgeon was then put into psychiatry, right? And, a brilliant doctor was put into psychiatry. So one of the things I'm saying goes back to the beginning where we started. A lot of the judiciary are involved in this sex cult. And the depravity and utter degeneracy of the sex cult cannot possibly be imagined by most sane people. So this is why I'm saying, I'm priming you all to start thinking along the lines and ask literally factual, detailed, down-to-earth questions of how on earth could they have possibly pulled it off? How on earth? And when you listen to all the testimony of the MK Ultra victims, the ones who have been run and programmed to be sex kittens, the one recurring theme is that they were raped by many people at the same time, being in the same room at the same time. And it could very well be, and I think it should be investigated if this guy wasn't also part of these people in the same room. And maybe that's how, it's a serious point of investigation, because we see it over and over everywhere in the world.
Yeah, I think so. And, they not only protect each other, they just happily throw people into psychiatry at a moment's notice, right? Psychiatry is being used to protect themselves. So to protect criminality, they use psychiatry.
And a lot of the psychiatrists are themselves psychopathic or sexually depraved.
I would imagine they would be. They must be part of that group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it seems from my experience that NSA security actually entices psychologists who have problem backgrounds to work for them. Like the one who basically told me if I didn't drop my inspector general request, that she would go back through my records of totally past routine psychological evaluations and find a problem. Well, she got in trouble for working at a place that's seen as a psychiatric institution for the criminally insane. She got in trouble because she and another female psychologist were using the drugs meant to sedate the sickest of the sick. They were using them recreationally, and she and another female psychologist were having private parties with them.
I'm sure just like they never had sexual relations of any kind.
So NSA just loved her, just enticed her and said, "Oh, you're in trouble for doing this. Well, come work for us."
I mean, truth be told, she fitted right in, right?
Yes, indeed. So that's the type of person
criminally insane actually perfectly describes them.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say she was one of those people who eventually figured out that she was a psychopath and decided that becoming a psychologist was a great way to hide it or indulge it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that thing that she said to you is actually bombshell. It should be, front page news for the whole world to hear. Yeah. Here you have somebody reporting corruption inside the National Security Agency, and what the psychologist says to you is, I'm going to go through your files and find something to stick on you and completely assault your credibility with, so that we take you out of the picture.
For legitimate, protected whistleblowing, because the No Fear Act was so important. The Congress passed it. They said, by golly, we've passed all these whistleblower protection laws that are absolutely being ignored. So we are passing the granddaddy of all whistleblower protection laws, called the No Fear Act. In fact, we are mandating that every single federal agency teach this class to every single employee once a year. But that, of course, didn't stop NSA from saying, how do we circumvent this? Oh, yes, the mental illness accusation. We'll just blow this out of the water. And anybody says anything to us, then we're going to call them crazy. I'm sorry, but you can't have a security clearance if you're crazy. So goodbye. So that's, that was so simple. And Congress, of course, throws a law out there and never comes back to see if it's working or not.
I think we should fight them with their own weapons. And given that they're utterly criminally insane and totally sexually depraved, I think they should have their security clearance revoked immediately. And they should be Baker acted straight away. Because they are criminally insane.
That would be perfect. Hoist them with their own petard. Yeah, Baker act them, please. Throw them in a jail cell, in a psychiatric jail cell. Make sure you have them strip in front of birds of the opposite sex first, like they did with Melanie.
Frankly, they would love that. So I would just throw them into an isolation cell.
Yeah, okay, maybe drop that one.
No, I would say they would have to refile their tax return going back the last 20 years,
Oh, no, living hell.
No, actually refile it and send the funds to us, please. I don't think the IRS should get it.
That's true, because they're part of this type of problem, for Pete's sake,
Yes.
It's just
I
insane.
think we've had a great time this morning talking about all of this. We kind of need to think of wrapping this up. So maybe if you want to offer your closing words on NSA and how inept they are.
I think the article this week said it all, that NSA was dropping integrity and openness from their core values. I mean, guys, if you're still working at NSA, you need to reconsider and remember the term lateral transfer. Transfer anywhere but NSA. Get the heck out of there. Leave them high and dry. The worst enemies to our country are there. They're on the upper floors of Ops 2B, and you need to find legitimate work. This is insane. This is insane. If you want to be a traitor for your country, that's the place to work. I had started there because I wanted to actually do something for my country. And I guess this is the best thing that's come out of it, is to tell people what a scumbag operation NSA is. I mean, the people in doing the work, they think they're doing something for their country, but the managers are the worst of the worst. So I would say laterally transfer. Get out of there, and because I think the place may collapse. You may have a evisceration of NSA management, and they'll probably be more than happy to blame it on you. So think about that.
Absolutely. And I, based on what I've heard from NSA, I just want, if I may address your colleagues as well, I just want to say you could get as much sex and, love int and jerking off outside of NSA as you get inside, so why stay there? But honestly, this is so pathetic. And it's so scary that the people who are, harvesting all of our data and are feeding it to very powerful algorithms, written by brilliant people and then used for absolute, disgusting stuff. They're all sitting there and all they can think about is, what woman to do during the lunch break. I mean, that's basically the standard of these people, and what can you say at this point? I don't think these people can stop themselves. I think and whatever's going on at NSA is being mirrored in our own communities. So, those perverts are just as bad as the neighbor perverts who get off on our, indoor surveillance and get off on shooting us in the genitals with weapons that they have been given by the FBI and, Swiss and German and English intelligence agencies. And I just want the entire world to wake up and realize we are basically being the best people we have are being mutilated to death for people to jerk one off. That is it. That's the war of the 21st century. It's the most pathetic war that mankind has ever seen. And I'm really sad that Dr. Millicent Black isn't here. And I want people to actually, we will start a campaign for her in February because she's the hardest hit. But she is connected up to an Air Force veteran through an ear chips, and he spends his entire day talking about, if I remember correctly, the scent of other women's genitals and how he can get $80 blowjobs. And this is a decorated Air Force veteran using the best of Air Force high tech. Wow. You know, so that's what we are dealing with, guys. This is it. You know, this isn't high tech. These people aren't doing police work. They're not doing intelligence. They're just having a wank. So on this note, see you next week. Your microphone, Ramola.
Oh, sorry. So Catherine, I actually wanted to kind of point out something that you had said earlier. You know, I was actually very impressed that you kind of put out a call on one of our shows, I think, for military generals to step forward and start acting like men again. And a military colonel contacted you. And that's actually very impressive. You're going to be working with him now, you know, and starting your own version of Techno, etc. In German. And that's brilliant. So you said a little bit earlier that, you know, we need hackers.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to kind of echo that a little bit. Yeah, we do need some hackers with integrity and spine and awareness about what's really going on in the country right now, in the US and in the rest of the world. What's really going on is we've already been taken over. Our government's been overthrown. Our American government's been overthrown. We've got anti-American globalist lunatics, psychopaths, who are currently running these agencies. Satanists, thank you. You know, death and destruction worshippers, you know, demon worshippers. We've got these lunatics in power in our agencies, and they are destroying America and Americans, American neighborhoods. You know, they're taking all of us over. So yeah, we actually do need hackers, and we need people with guts. You know, we need people in the military to step up to the plate. If you're a true American, if you're truly patriotic, and you know, this is very interesting that I would use the word patriotic now, but I see the difference now. The guys who have used the Patriot Act against America are not patriots. They're using the word patriot, you know, and they use the insignia patriot. But those guys are anti-American, they're anti-nationalists, they're anti-sovereign, they're anti-individual. What they are is pro-globalist, pro-communist, pro-totalitarian, pro-dictatorship, pro-tyranny, fascism, Satanism, and lunacy. These lunatics need to be taken out. In every which way, they need to be taken out of our society. They need to be taken out of positions of power because they are running programs of torture. They're running programs of criminality, torture, and atrocity on the whole of the population. We are calling it surveillance abuse, we're calling it targeting, but these are mild words. They're literally torturing Americans in their own homes. They're irradiating Americans in their beds as they sleep, okay? And for this reason, these criminals do need to be taken out. So in a sense, we do need to appeal to our militaries, to our white hats in the military, to our, you know, guys who can hack, guys and ladies who can hack, and guys and ladies who can begin to address this problem from the inside. We do need to keep addressing you and saying, we need you guys to step up to the plate here and recognize what we're dealing with. We need to take these guys out. And, you know, of course, when we use this term, we need to take these guys out, we also try on saying, we try to modify it and qualify it, saying administratively. And of course we mean that because we mean it, you know, we are obviously, none of us even know how to work guns. We are peaceful activists.
Don't listen to her. Take them out. Just take them out.
But we're also outspoken. And, you know, I agree with you, Catherine. When I don't want to qualify take them out. I want to say, take them out. Take them out of power. They have no business running national security. They have no business running federal bureaus of investigation or running central intelligence agencies. Take them out and dissolve those agencies, please. Dissolve secrecy. Remove this from our midst. We are trying to build a human and humane and compassionate society. That's what each one of us stands for on this panel and everybody behind us whom you don't see speaking on this panel, you know, week after week, but who support us and whom we are in connection with and communication with. We are interested in building a humane society and warm and meaningful and caring and connected community. But none of these agencies are engaged in that. They're engaged in the opposite. And we need to bring their reign to an end. that's my closing note. So on that note, if you guys don't have a comeback, I will close this session, say thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.